The Civil War was known as the War of Brother Against Brother. This certainly would prove true on the afternoon of July 1st. Elements of the 45th New York Infantry Regiment from Syracuse, New York, were ordered to the barn and surrounding areas to flush out Confederate sharpshooters. One of the soldiers present with this Union regiment that day was a corporal by the name of Rudolph Schwartz, a German immigrant. Union troops were not just any volunteers. They were the famed men of the Iron Brigade, the black-hatted volunteers from the states of Wisconsin, Michigan, and Indiana. These soldiers had developed a rugged reputation for fighting hard as iron. As the fighting commenced, Reynolds turned to look for more reserves when he was shot in the back of the head. He was dead before he hit the ground, the highest-ranking officer to be killed in the Battle of Gettysburg. Another person who took part in the fighting along McPherson's Ridge was a man by the name of John Burns. At around 2:30 in the afternoon, Confederate infantry emerged from the woods on Oak Hill all around where we are currently parked. This dedication marked the last of the great Civil War reunions. Approximately 1,800 veterans attended the ceremony. Their average age was 95. And while these old veterans of the blue and the gray now stood united, in 1863 they faced each other as mortal enemies on this very ground.
Were outnumbered, but they were also outgunned, and after firing some shots for maybe an hour scattered far, the Union cavalry fell back. I want to make sure it's very clear to understand something. The Confederates had 8,000 men and 24 cannons. The Union on this area had about 6,000 cavalry all across Gettysburg, guarding all the roads, and some cannon also. They probably had about, I'd say, 8 or 10.
The hill where the Peace Light Memorial sits had a lot of strategic value at the time of the battle. As you can see, Oak Hill is one of the highest points west and northwest of town. Controlling high ground is paramount to both armies during the battle, as it was during the entire Civil War. That is why Oak Hill was so important on July 1st, 1863. Near to where the large radio tower now stands. This was a weak position for the Union troops north of town. Without a shred of cover, they were Barlow, who attempted to defend the knoll during the battle. What Barlow found out, though, was that the knoll was particularly vulnerable to attack from several directions. At 3:30 in the afternoon, 1,800 Georgians came screaming over the fences, splashing through a creek, and slammed into the Union position atop the hill. Despite the fact that Meigs was born in Georgia and had a brother serving in the Confederacy, he harbored deep resentment toward former Army officers who had joined the Southern cause. So deep was his hatred for Lee and his decision to fight against the United States that when the federal government seized Lee's former estate, Arlington House, because of $92 worth of delinquent taxes, Meigs devised a plan to ensure Lee could estate became Arlington National Cemetery. To this day, you can see the graves of the Union soldiers buried in the Rose Garden under direct orders from General Meigs. In 1864, Meigs' own son was killed while serving in the Union Army and was buried on the grounds. When Meigs died in 1892, the general was laid to rest next to his son just a few feet from Lee's former home. In addition to the main effort against the Union left, Lee also instructed General Richard S. Ewell to make a demonstration against the far right end of the Union line located on Cemetery Hill and Culp's Hill. Confederates then used the boulders as protection to shoot at Union troops along the crest of Little Round Top. Following the battle, this area became very popular with the photographers who came to visit the battlefield. In many cases, however, it took several days for them to reach Gettysburg. On this part of the battlefield, there were still many soldiers who had not yet been buried. Turning their camera lenses toward these men, photographers like Timothy O'Sullivan and Alexander Gardner captured, printed, and displayed the horrors of war for civilians back home. On Thursday, July 2nd, 1863, in this small 20-acre field and surrounding woods, about 4,000 Confederate and Union men were killed, wounded, or captured here during the fight. Portions of this field, the lower parts, changed hands some 6 times. In the early evening, about 6 o'clock, Mississippi soldiers from the brigade of William Barksdale smashed into the peach orchard and ripped a hole in the middle of the Union line, capturing a number of Union prisoners.